All right, everyone. I'm talking to Greg Wilkinson, guitarist of Deathgrave, also a member of Autopsy on bass. How are you doing, Greg?
I'm doing well.
Awesome. Yeah, again, thanks for talking to me. Fan of Deathgrave and Autopsy, and just want to just talk to you about Deathgrave's upcoming album. It's only midnight, and I believe that's coming out April 14. So coming up on
Yep.
that. So for anyone who's not familiar with Deathgrave, can you just kind of talk about kind of like yourself, I guess your background and how you started Deathgrave?
Yeah. So we basically we're notably from San Jose and originally. Now that three of us live in Oakland, but originally it was we were a San Jose band. I was the one lone Oakland guy, and I really wanted to do a band initially with Fern and Andre, and so we decided we weren't sure exactly what kind of music we were going to do, but we wanted it to be fast, aggressive with short songs and kind of fun. So I think we've kind of kept that angle to our stuff. Um, and yeah, as we've evolved, now we have a new drummer as of 2018, so not really that new anymore. But the sound has once again changed into even more fast and even more bizarre and fucked up. It seems like the longer the band lives, the more fucked up our sound gets, and twisted and kind of noisy and kind of chaotic and fun at the same time. Um, so yeah, so that now at this point we're still technically a San Jose band because we practice down there, but three of us live in Oakland. So that's about the main parts of the history. I think that's important. So
Yeah, awesome. And kind of like, what was your background like with music? How did you get into playing like music?
I think all of us, everyone in the band currently has been sorry, hold on, say so basically everyone in the band has currently been playing music for at least 20 years, if not more. I think Fern and I probably closer to 30 years at this point. Um, and most of us, I think all of us were playing in bands in high school with whatever friends we had, and just it just sort of stuck. I think we're at this point officially lifers now that we're all in our 40s. So, um, yeah, and as far as getting the band together and all that, it was sort of like, we're lifers that are going to do this and have fun, and we don't really have an aspiration of being popular or cool, and we're not trying to write a specific thing. And I kind of feel like our bands in history were the same way. Like all of us have been in bands that were sort of not really in the fray of the popular genres and popular bands, but we did what we loved at the time, and I think that kind of made it all of us gravitate towards each other as musicians because we still don't want to be compromising. We want to play music. We want to have fun. We want to tour. We want to make albums. We want to do all the stuff that bands do and whatnot. And it's just kind of cool to find people that are willing to do that, but not willing to compromise on like the sound and conforming and whatnot. So in my personal experience, I started music in the early 90s doing more punk, and then I started discovering more grindcore and power violence and faster genres of music. By the late 90s, I started recording as well. More professionally, I used to just do stuff on four track cassette and then 8 track cassette in the early mid 90s, and then got into 2-inch tape and really understood, started learning what compressors and what the differences were in mics and the preamps and how they work and EQ and all the fun stuff recording engineers learn and whatnot. And so I kind of stayed in music always, even if I wasn't in a working touring band. I always played music, and more importantly, I've always recorded bands. since the late 90s. So that's my involvement of music, and I think that's why I'm still here.
Yeah, that's awesome. And when you decided to form Deathgrave, you said you kind of had like you had a vision to start the band, but kind of weren't sure what exactly to call it. Like when you were starting out, like how, or what were some of like the big influences? Because if people don't know, Deathgrave is kind of like a death grind like sound, but what were some of the bands that really kind of push you to put together the sound of Deathgrave?
So the initial premise of Deathgrave, and we sound nothing like it, so sorry to mislead everyone who's listening to this, but the initial plan, I wanted to start a band that sounded something along the lines of Rudimentary Peni meets Siege. So I kind of wanted the weirdness of Rudimentary Peni and that kind of punk catching rhythmic guitars, but a little more on the grind kind of blast beats, but not technical grind or anything like that. More primitive punk grind kind of stuff. So more in the, early Napalm Death and that kind of fun stuff. So that was the initial plan. It clearly wasn't going to happen. Once we found the drummer and we really started jamming together, the couch talk over, drinking beers and talking about what we wanted to do as a band and the reality of where we all came from musically and that kind of stuff really didn't line that way. And I'm kind of glad it kind of took its own form. And I think that's something really magical about everyone in the band, is that nobody really was like trying, it was kind of just a conversation piece. You want to do a punk kind of grind kind of thing, but make it weird as shit, and that was sort of like the beginning base. So at this point, I really don't know like what influences. I feel like as a guitar player, I would cite like influences of, things like Napalm Death and like even Autopsy and Abscess, but also, a little bit of Peni in for the punk stuff, but then also this Zenigeva kind of Godflesh industrial guitar work on top of it, and even at times Voivod I would cite as like an influence. But if you're looking to hear any of those bands in our music, you're probably going to be sorely disappointed. So, but that's kind of like the background when I'm writing riffs. Those are probably moments of inspiration where I'm like, oh yeah, okay, this kind of has this weird, Voivod energy to it. But by the time it gets processed, I kind of feel like this way about every band that's got a healthy dynamic between members, is that if you bring something to the table, you got to let it go through the blender and see what comes out on the other side. You don't go in there with a solid plan with riffs. You basically are like, these are the riffs, and then see how everyone interprets it. So that is definitely what Deathgrave is, and I think in a way that gives Deathgrave its sound. Not that it's like we aren't reinventing the wheel or anything, but it is fun that it's kind of like hard to explain. We aren't sequestered into just death grind or death metal or grindcore and that kind of stuff, because there's 4 people from slightly different backgrounds all making input together, so
Yeah.
But that's about the closest sightings I could come up with, me personally. Now, if you talk to Andre or Fern or Clint, they might cite different names for bands. So
yeah. One of the things when I first saw like Deathgrave, the first album, Surreal It's Now, the album cover, I was kind of drawn to that just because like I'm a big Carcass fan, and anything with like weird like medical like horror like imagery, like I'm a big fan of, like like bands like Impaled and Exhumed, like I don't know, like that kind of like that kind of art just kind of like pulls me in, and I always want to check it out. So that's kind of how I got pulled into that the first album for Deathgrave.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, that album, and for sure I could say that, you know, there is moments of Carcass kind of, you know, almost, you know, sleazy death metal, like almost D-beat kind of vibe in some of our stuff, you know, where it's like not Discharge D-beat, you know, like Carcass, or, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a little bit of that too, and whatnot. I love that stuff too. I think everyone in our band loves all that kind of whatever medical death metal out there. So, you know, but yeah, and I'm grateful for our artist Max, who's been doing our album covers, because he really gets what we're doing, and he embraces the weirdness of the art, where we're not just like, hey, we want a bunch of gore, you know, or just something, you know, that's typical for like a metal band, right? You know, you're just like, hey, you know, I just want like a pile of intestines and like a dead corpse or something like that, or all the easy stuff that, you know, the easy go-tos, where we're like, you know, for It's Only Midnight, we're talking about, we want this neighborhood, and that there's a fabric of time from a different dimension that's just completely horrible and scary ripping into this neighborhood. And I think what he did with it was great. And same thing, you know, on the first album, he reinterpreted a piece that Daniel Shaw did for us, which Daniel Shaw's piece was killer too. It, you know, the same thing for on So Real It's Now. But like Max's interpretation of it was taking Daniel Shaw's like more brutal, kind of scary, and just putting these psychedelic wheels on it, to where it's like super, you know, vibrant, scary with all the colors and stuff. So, you know, I feel like, you know, teaming up with a good artist to try to convey what your music is on an album cover is important, you know. So we're lucky to have Max on board with us.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I really dig that, the new album's artwork. The new album is It's Only Midnight, and that's going to come out April 14th. So this new album, I did get a chance to kind of check out the album with the promo that was sent. Yeah, it does. It does have some difference compared to the first album. I definitely can hear, I don't know, almost like some doomy stuff. Like some of there's a couple of moments where, you know, the intensity kind of pulls back, and there's a little more like doomier, like, you know, approach. Were there any major changes aside from your new drummer? But were there any like major changes that you guys incorporated for this new album?
I would say a major change, and I believe everyone in the band would agree, especially, you know, the three of us that have been on, you know, this ride the whole time. But I think Clint even saw it, because he did learn. He learned most of So Real It's Now when he joined. I think the major change in the band is that we really have completely abandoned all notions of like what we sound like. We have no fucking idea what we're doing anymore. And we're really cool with that. Like at this point, we're trying to just push the boundaries of weirdness and stuff, but without just becoming a bizarre art rock band or something. We're not trying to like out weird everyone or anything like that, but you know, it seems almost like the weirder the ideas and the construct of the songs that we come up with, the more we're entertained with it. And I think that is definitely a departure from So Real It's Now. You know, I think It's Only Midnight we just basically are like, we don't know what band we are. You know what I mean? Yeah. I felt like in So Real It's Now, we were still kind of dabbling with like the death grind, but like bringing in all these weird moments, but we weren't totally fully committed to it, right? Like we were like, oh, we can't do that kind of weird trippy shit for every song. And now it's like, I feel like in It's Only Midnight, it's like the riffs themselves are just weird at times, instead of adding like a weird guitar lead or Andre doing some freaky vocals. Now it's just the songs have just been written weird. the riffs themselves and the drumming and everything has just gotten really kind of almost cerebral in that sense, but in through a grind filter. So I think that's a departure that I'm going to stick with.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's awesome. I'm just looking forward to just getting like well, I'm a CD collector, and I just want to like kind of get the booklet and like scroll through the lyrics. One question I thought of, you you actually got to be a part of Autopsy to play bass.
Yeah.
Did that experience, or playing with Autopsy, like did that influence you when doing this new Deathgrave album?
I'm going to say no because this album was already fully written before I joined Autopsy. So, because we had most of the album written by 2020, and just with COVID and the fact that we didn't have any pending tours or anything coming up, everything got canceled in 2020. It gave us time to kind of refine what we had instead of keep writing, if that makes sense. And so by the time I joined Autopsy, I do think one thing that I can say in joining Autopsy, it has kind of helped me a little bit to realize that it really doesn't fucking matter what you do. If you do whatever you're doing with conviction, it might take 30 years for people to catch on. It didn't take people that long for Autopsy, but it's one of those things where you just keep doing whatever you feel is right for you and don't compromise in any way. And I think that is something, the only change that I feel like I really got out of that. I guess a boost of confidence that what we're doing is right. Because sometimes, how conversational music is, you're always there's always times where you're kind of second guessing yourself and you're like, is this really a good idea just to go totally out there and say, fuck it, and stuff. And I feel like, joining Autopsy has kind of lifted the veil and to show that like, it's okay to say, fuck it and do what you do, and stuff. The people that you want to accept it will, and there will be always the armed crossers that will never accept whatever you do and stuff. So, I think it was a good boost of confidence to say that, I think what I'm doing is right. What the band is doing is the right move.
Yeah. Real quick, like how did you get approached to play for Autopsy?
Chris and I we were slated to go and start what became an actual band, but I was recording at Great American Music Hall during COVID, during the lockdown. My friend was managing there. He said, hey, just set up a studio here, and if we're not doing a live stream or something, you've got the keys and code to get in, and just pay rent here for, the days that you're using it, which was a very, very awesome price and super nice. He did that. So I was talking to Chris, who, we've become friends over the years, and I was like, hey, you want to just kick some dirt off and come play drums and do vocals? And he's like, sure. Do you have any plan? I was like, absolutely none. So we wound up getting together and actually wound up writing a 40-minute album under the moniker Static Abyss. And as we were doing that, Joe, the previous bass player, was telling the band, he was like, hey, my family, I'm really happy they're moving to Tennessee. I'm going to go with them. Or I think it was Tennessee, but his oldest son was getting married and he was relocating. And so Joe decided to relocate, which obviously was going to flatline Autopsy at any opportunity, if Joe was going to have to fly around just to practice. So, Chris, I guess they were going through, what they told me was a very, very short list of a few names. And Chris mentioned, hey, we should have Greg come down and try out. And I guess the rest is history. I went and tried out. 2 practices in, I got a phone call and said, do you want the gig? And I said, sure, let's do this,
Yeah. That's pretty awesome. Yeah, I dig Autopsy. Yeah, like I got there's like I don't know, there's an Autopsy like documentary DVD I picked up and watched it and just kind of picked up on them when they kind of came. I'd say probably about 2012-ish or something. I'm 37, so I wasn't like, you know, into Autopsy when they came out in the 90s. I kind of more discovered them about 10, 11 years ago. So I'm a big Autopsy fan.
Nice.
Yeah, and real quick, I know I don't want to take up too much time. You guys got a tour coming up with Necrot.
Yes.
And Mortiferum. I live pretty close to Albuquerque. I saw that Albuquerque's on one of the dates. I definitely want to try and make that. Hopefully my schedule works out. But for this upcoming tour, what can people expect when people check out Deathgrave on this upcoming tour?
Well, we'll have our album, and this is our first official tour with Clint that he's actually on the record we're selling. So I'm really excited about that in a lot of ways. You know, it's because I love that Clint has done, you know, tours for years with us now, and it's not on anything we recorded. And so that, first of all, is exciting to me. It's exciting to have this album that we've spent a long time making and selling this, and now I feel like we're spreading the current music again that we're playing. And then, but yeah, like I would expect, you know, a very fun time. That's what I could say. We're gonna have fun. We're enjoying the fact that we get to go back down there and see everyone again. We haven't been down in the Southwest except for that Arizona show that you said. I think that was that late 19 or early 2020.
Yeah, it was like December 2019. Yeah, just a few months before the lockdown.
Okay, yeah, and I think last time we were down in the Southwest region was, I want to say it was a 2016 or 17. So expect us to be faster, more furious, more bizarre, and having fun. And you know, we hope to see some smiling faces out there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I really really dig all the bands on that lineup. I mean, Necrot are just like, I mean, they're just legends. They've just been. They put out an album a few years ago, and it's just like one of the best albums that, you know, everyone's best of list, and Mortiferum as well. It's pretty varied now that I look at it. Like, you guys are kind of like the grind, like bring the grind. Mortiferum's like the more doomy side, and Necrot's kind of like the thrashy death sound. So that's pretty cool, pretty varied.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this package, and we're friends with everyone on this package too, pre-existing. So there's not really an intimidation of going on tour with a bunch of strangers to figure out if they're cool or not. We already know that they're cool, so I think that's exciting as well. So, and they're, both those bands are killer. So yeah. I think that this is going to be super fun, and yeah, it is varied. I'm really stoked that we were asked to join this package and stuff. You know, it seemed like the right thing to do, and so close to after our LP came out, or is coming out. You know, it only had been out for like a month before we're on the road, so it'll be fresh, which is cool. So it's exciting to get to bring a brand new record, you know, like basically, you know, umbrellaed under these two awesome bands. So under the wing of these awesome bands. So
awesome.
But I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks again, Greg. I don't want to take up too much time. I know there's like certain time slots you're doing interviews for, but yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, no problem.